Continuing on my reviews of Lost Legends, we got our second tale, Comix Up. In it, on a boring day, Zeus stops by with a bunch of his comics, but Stan doesn't like them and stores them away in a scary chest. Unfortunately, this makes them come alive and capture Stan. Now it's up to the Mystery Shack crew to save him. Shenanigans ensue.
Have you ever seen a baby that looked old? Like an old baby?
Well, we've officially run out of things to talk about.
How hasn't a conversation like this happened already?
If only there was a way to go on an adventure without getting up or tilting my neck.
Who wants a truckload of comic books?
What?
Zeus apparently has a very large comic collection and he needs a new place to store. The twins are very excited about it and use your stereotypical comic book jokes. Then Mabel gets some white out and starts writing herself. Egag, my face is 90% chin. I'll never. Punch away my loneliness. Haha, Eisner Award, here I come. An Eisner Award is basically the equivalent of like an Oscar or an Emmy for comic books, named after Will Eisner, who's the one who created The Spirit. Oh no, Stan really does not like comic books, and he wants them to be tossed in the bottomless pit. Zeus argues that they're an art form, but Stan still doesn't want anything to do with it. You see Wendy reading Blarchy. Blarchy is an obvious reference to Archie, one of the longest running and successful non-superhero comics in the West, following a ginger kid named Archie and a love triangle. Most people these days probably know it best for that terrible Riverdale show that just made everything grimdark for no reason. So Stan confiscates all the comics and stuffs them in a big evil chest, which of course because Gravity Falls is cursed. I think the design might be a reference to the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. That also had a cursed chest in it. And then later while watching Ducktective, Stan gets attacked by the narrator. Probably not intentional, but I want to think that's a reference to Mr. Nobody from Doom Patrol, who's also an evil narrator. So Stan tells Ford about it. They look really bad in this panel. Like, their bodies look normal, but their heads are freakishly oversized. Stan, that chest is cursed! Is everything you own cursed? And the chest decides to assault Stan for his assault on graphic novels. Don't you mean comics? No, I mean graphic novels. Seems kinda pretentious, is all. Yeah, graphic novel is kind of one of those pretentious, I mean one thing, but I'm gonna say another thing just to sound cooler, which I kinda hate. So Stan gets sucked into a comic book. The Cursed Stan, issue number 1. Issue number 1, but he has plenty more issues. Given the font, this is definitely a reference to Tales from the Crypt. So Ford gets the gain. One gag about how expensive comic books are, and decides we're gonna go inside the comics to get Stan. The girls are surprisingly really into this. Alright everyone, Change are about to get two-dimensional. Say goodbye to your whiff. Wait a minute. Last one there has to kiss Marmaduke. Marmaduke is one of those comics that are still printed in like newspapers, following a big dog. Not like Clifford Big, just like a normal big dog. It's definitely not as appealing as Garfield or even Family Circus. And for some reason it has a movie. It's kind of weird that Wendy of all people would know what Marmaduke is. This feels like a joke that like Ford would say. So they head into the comic, and yes indeed, they do shift art styles. So now suddenly they look like classic old comics. I don't know what exactly this art style is called, but it looks like stuff like Bazooka Joe or like the old Casper books. Especially Dipper looks like Casper. Approved by the Comics Code Authority was this authority that was set up around the 40s-ish, 50s, 60s, and early 70s, which basically censored anything that would be offensive towards a conservative white adult in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, which was basically everything and made comic books worse. The very strict censorship was lifted around the 70s, leading into the Bronze Age of comics, and now you see these symbols as like ironic things, kind of like parental guidance on music albums. One quick fourth wall break with the panels, and turns out the comic dimensions are unstable, as they shift to another art style. It took me a while to get what they meant, but as we see later, it's meant to be Mad Magazine. Mad Magazine, which the people watching this probably know better from Mad, the cartoon on Cartoon Network. Starting from 1952, even up until today, it's a comic book about spoofing whatever is popular in film and pop culture at the time. I understood the reference when we saw this purple guy who's clearly meant to be Spy vs. Spy, two characters from the Mad series, dressed in white and black, who always tried doing bad things to each other. Billroy was here as a reference to Kilroy was here. Kilroy was here as a popular graffiti which probably existed before but was made iconic during World War II, being left behind by Allied soldiers, and was so popular and iconic they even put it on the World War II memorials. Turns out the purple guy knows where Stan is, but he has to get caught first, as the art style shifts again into manga. There's the inevitable manga jokes about giant eyes and chibis, and flowers in the background, and school uniforms that look like sailor dresses, and long titles, and everyone's a teenager forever, and everyone blushes a lot, hyper-detailed Mabel, and hyper-detailed Ford, and Mabel doing the pose, and then the other pose. It's pretty average jokes that everyone's told before, but I still appreciate it as a manga fan. Then Gideon out of nowhere appears. 7 crystals is probably referencing the Dragon Balls from Dragon Ball, Sailor, Sailor Moon, Angels, could be anything, capture cards, maybe Yu-Gi-Oh! But Mabel snaps out of it and rejects him. But there's William Afton escaping. But then the art style shifts again to resemble Hellboy. Hellboy has one of the best art styles in any medium. It's very stylized with stark colors and dark shadows. I love it to bits. Even Dipper has a right hand of doom, but on his left hand, which is a reference to Hellboy's glove. Thanks for the captions translating the zombie. But luckily a helpful crow points out where Purple Guy is. Mabel trusts the terrifying bird 100%, which never really comes back, which feels like it should have set up something. And speaking of, where did Gideon go? Was he just like an illusion by the comics? He should still be in jail at this point. What's his deal? But venturing forth, and we get another art shift to be more kind of modern standard comic book art, with more realistic looking characters, and then the little dot backgrounds to tell that's a comic book. Zeus looks like Larry the Cable Guy. And they come across the Instructa Buddies, issue 618, in the overextended verse. Insert overused and inaccurate joke that the MCU's gone on too long. The Instructa Buddies are apparently the people that Mabel was coloring over in the beginning. They're mad about it, so they're going to protect Purple Guy. They have like Batman, Superman over here in orange and yellow called the Instructa Bro. They have like Werewolf by Night, Blue and Silver Iron Man, Scarface with an orange bat, the Thane but blocky, and then this green-haired lady with a shaved side of her head. No word what happened to the other guy that Mabel colored on. You know that Disney owns both products. Why wasn't this just like an actual crossover of the Avengers? Mabel stabs Instructor Bro with his own speech bubble. But Soos decides to be a little less violent and grabs the narrator and writes on him to give them superpowers. Mabel becomes Painbow and is able to shoot rainbows. Dipper becomes Overthinker with telekinervousness. I think his head might be a reference to the leader from Marvel Comics, whose whole thing is that he's smart as the Hulk is strong. Ford is Six Shooter, basically himself. He gets the lame powers of just big guns. But I like that his trench coat now has the journal symbol on the back. Wendy becomes Plaid Widow, basically just the same. Now she has 2 axes, and now she's wearing not just a plaid shirt, but plaid pants. Kinda wish they did a little more of a reference to Black Widow or even Spider-Woman. And Zeus becomes Dude with the ability to grow every time he says dude. You wouldn't like me when I'm amiable, dude. Of course referencing you wouldn't like me when I'm angry, which is the Hulk saying. So they grab why am I making this a FNAF reference, but he has a bomb. Saying all of them flying into their normal art style from the show, with Zeus ending up in the margins, aka the space between spaces in comics. Oh man, this is confusing. A D that looks like a G. Where am I? Okay, that's hilarious. But eventually Zeus, looking around, finds Stan, and Stan's at Stan selling something that's worth 5 of something. Zeus doesn't understand it, but clearly this is a reference to Homestuck. Stan starts crying, but he deflects by saying that he's shooting attack poison from his eyes like a desert lizard. This is a reference to the horned lizard that doesn't shoot poison from its eyes, it shoots blood from its eyes. It turns out that Stan doesn't actually hate comics, he used to love them. He used to read them all the time and draw some comics in his room when he was younger. They recreate the room from the show really well. He read stuff like Captain Nazi Puncher. I love that they were able to get away with that in a book by Disney. clearly referencing Captain America, who punched Hitler on the cover of his first appearance, Skimperella, who I'm going to say is a Stripperella reference because it's funny and really unfitting for this series, and the Excessive Force, which might be a reference to X-Force or X-Men in general, I don't know. Apparently Stan got into a fist fight with Stan Lee in 1973. Stan Lee is basically the big face of comic books, writing, creating, and co-creating basically the entire Marvel Universe. Sarcastic Puppy, who loves lasagna, is clearly the weird love child between Odie and Garfield. Stan loves comics, but they don't love him back. But Soos loves that he has a new comic book fan to nerd out with. Plus, it's the 21st century. You don't need a publisher to publish your work, you can just post it online. Places like Twitter, Webtoon, and DeviantArt exist. So Stan learned his lesson and tries apologizing, but he refuses to say graphic novel, so this gets him into hot water and sent into the abyss. Until the group finds him because, well, it's paper. This whole world is just paper. Another gag about how expensive comic books are, but the narrator isn't done yet. But Mabel has the whiteout, I guess she brought it with her. The narrator is defeated and they're sent home. Notice that they changed from the show's art style to resemble the art style at the beginning of the story. With third dimensions. We learned a lesson that reading is bad and we should smash the state. Soos helps Stan remake his comic, and it turns out someone actually wants to buy the physical media. I love Stan's face here, it's so silly. Let that be a lesson to all of us. Beneath every hard, grunkly exterior beats the soft, nerdy heart of a Soos. The story can take place just about whenever after the events of Not What He Seems. Unlike the last story, there's nothing super significant placing it whenever. Mabel outfit check. She's wearing her classic shooting star sweater. Japanese schoolgirl sailor dress. I think they tried giving her a belly, but then just blacked it out because they thought it would be weird. Her paintbow uniform is basically one big pink poncho, with a black belt and a big yellow diamond on it, and underneath she has black boots and pants. And in Hellboy world, she's wearing like goggles and a big trench coat. I think it might be a reference to Abe Sapien from Hellboy, but I don't know. The book continues to be really, really good. I kind of love the messaging of the story, and how just because you were burned in the past doesn't mean you should reject something you love. I love all the different comic book references within the story, especially when they go to Hellboy world. It especially shows that the creators know and care about this stuff. And I love seeing all the characters and all these radically different art styles. It's just so fun. But it is kind of weird they never really resolved Purple Guy, or explain what Gideon was doing here. But overall, I'm going to give this story a 9.5 out of 10. Make sure to hit the like button, share with your friends, comment your thoughts, and subscribe if you're new.
Yeah! Who is this beautiful stranger?
Mabel-san, it's me, Senpai Gideon. Help me collect the 7 Crystal Sailor Angel capture cards, and then we can finally kiss. Titty.
No, never! Yikes!